Bangladesh, a country with a history of political turbulence, is facing a new wave of unrest. This follows the resignation of longtime Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina in August 2024. Since then, the nation has been grappling with an interim government and a surge in violence against minority communities, particularly Hindus. The interim government has struggled to maintain law and order, leading to a climate of fear and uncertainty. This political instability has created a fertile ground for extremist elements to exploit the situation and target vulnerable groups. The absence of a strong and decisive leadership has emboldened those with a history of religious intolerance. This has raised concerns about the safety and security of minorities in Bangladesh. Since August 2024, there has been a disturbing rise in attacks against Hindus in Bangladesh. These incidents have not only shocked the local communities, but have also drawn international attention and condemnation. These attacks have ranged from vandalism of temples and homes, which are often seen as the heart of the community, to more severe forms of violence. Physical assaults and even killings have been reported, leaving many in a state of fear and uncertainty about their safety and future. Reports suggest over 2,000 incidents of violence targeting Hindus since August. This alarming number highlights the severity and frequency of these attacks. Temples, considered sacred places of worship for Hindus, have been desecrated and destroyed. These acts of vandalism are not just physical attacks, but also deeply affect the spiritual and cultural fabric of the community. Homes have been looted and burned, displacing families and instilling fear within the community. The loss of one's home is not just a material loss, but also a loss of security and identity. The scale and brutality of these attacks have shocked many both within Bangladesh and internationally. The international community has called for immediate action to protect the Hindu minority and ensure their safety. These attacks are not isolated incidents, but rather part of a pattern of violence and intimidation directed at the Hindu minority. This pattern suggests a systematic effort to marginalize and terrorize the community. This has created a sense of vulnerability and fear among Hindus, many of whom have lived in Bangladesh for generations. The ongoing violence threatens their way of life and raises questions about their future in the country. International human rights organizations have condemned the violence and called for justice. Protests and solidarity marches have been organized worldwide, demanding an end to the attacks and protection for the Hindu community in Bangladesh. The government and community leaders are under pressure to address the issue and take concrete steps to ensure the safety and well-being of the Hindu minority. Efforts are being made to rebuild and support the affected families, but much more needs to be done to restore peace and security. Adding fuel to the fire was the arrest of Hindu monk Chinmoy Krishna Das in November 2024. He was accused of making derogatory remarks about Islam during a religious procession. His arrest sparked outrage among Hindus, who saw it as another example of the government's failure to protect them and their religious freedom. The arrest triggered widespread protests, particularly in Chittagong, a city with a significant Hindu population. These protests were met with a heavy-handed response from the authorities, further inflaming tensions between the communities. The arrest and subsequent protests highlight the growing distrust between the Hindu community and the authorities. They also underscore the sensitivity surrounding religious issues in Bangladesh. The recent violence has had a devastating impact on the Hindu community in Bangladesh. Over the past few months, there have been numerous reports of attacks on Hindu homes, temples, and businesses. These incidents have not only caused physical destruction, but have also deeply scarred the emotional and psychological well-being of the community members. The scale and frequency of these attacks have left the Hindu community in a state of shock and despair. Many live in a state of constant fear, afraid to practice their religion openly or even venture out of their homes. The fear of being targeted has forced many Hindus to practice their religious rituals in secrecy, behind closed doors. This sense of insecurity has permeated every aspect of their daily lives, making it difficult for them to carry on with their normal routines. The community's social fabric is being torn apart as people are afraid to gather for festivals, weddings, or even funerals. The attacks have resulted in deaths, injuries, and significant damage to property. Homes have been burned, temples vandalized, and businesses looted. The economic impact on the community is severe, with many families losing their livelihoods. The destruction of property is not just a financial loss, but also a blow to the cultural and religious heritage of the Hindu community. Each attack leaves behind a trail of devastation that takes years to rebuild. Beyond the physical harm, The psychological trauma inflicted on the community is immense. The constant threat of violence has left many individuals suffering from anxiety, depression, and post-traumatic stress disorder. Children are particularly vulnerable, growing up in an environment of fear and uncertainty. The long-term psychological impact on the community cannot be overstated, as it affects their ability to trust, to feel safe, and to envision a future in their own country. The attacks have shaken their sense of security and belonging in their own country. Many Hindu families have been displaced, forced to leave their homes and seek refuge in safer areas. This displacement adds to their distress, as they have to start over in unfamiliar surroundings, often without the support of their extended families and communities. The sense of being unwelcome in their own homeland is a heavy burden to bear. Many feel helpless and abandoned, their voices drowned out by the escalating violence. Despite their pleas for help, there has been little response from the authorities. The lack of action and accountability has only deepened their sense of isolation and abandonment. The community feels that their suffering is being ignored, and their calls for justice are falling on deaf ears. This sense of neglect exacerbates their trauma and makes it harder for them to recover. The situation has led some Hindus to question their future in Bangladesh. The ongoing violence and lack of protection have made many wonder if they have a place in the country they call home. The uncertainty about their future is a source of constant anxiety, as they grapple with the decision of whether to stay and face the risks or leave in search of safety and stability elsewhere. This exodus of a minority community is a worrying sign and a stark reminder of the human cost of religious intolerance. The departure of Hindus from Bangladesh is not just a loss for the community, but for the entire nation. It signifies a breakdown in social cohesion and a failure to protect the rights and dignity of all citizens. The human cost of this intolerance is immeasurable, as it tears apart families, disrupts lives, and erodes the rich cultural tapestry of the country. Section 5. International Condemnation and Concerns. The attacks on Hindus in Bangladesh have drawn widespread condemnation from the international community. The violence has sparked outrage and concern among various nations, human rights organizations, and global leaders who have all called for immediate action to address the situation. The international community has been vocal in its demand for justice and protection for the minority communities in Bangladesh, emphasizing the need for a peaceful and inclusive society. Countries like the United States, the United Kingdom, and India have expressed deep concern over the violence and urged the Bangladeshi government to take swift action to protect its minority populations. These nations have highlighted the importance of safeguarding human rights and ensuring that such incidents do not recur. The United States, in particular, has stressed the need for accountability and has called for a transparent investigation into the attacks. The UK has also echoed these sentiments, emphasizing the need for Bangladesh to uphold its international commitments to human rights. The U.S. State Department emphasized the importance of religious freedom and called for a thorough investigation into the attacks. They have urged the Bangladeshi authorities to ensure that those responsible are held accountable and that measures are put in place to prevent future violence. The emphasis on religious freedom underscores the broader concern for the protection of minority rights and the need for a society where all individuals can practice their faith without fear of persecution. India, with its large Hindu population and shared history with Bangladesh, has been particularly vocal in its criticism, demanding assurances of safety for Hindus. Indian officials have called for immediate steps to be taken to protect the Hindu community in Bangladesh and have offered support to ensure their safety. The Indian media has extensively covered the attacks, bringing attention to the plight of the victims and the need for urgent action. The strong response from India highlights the deep cultural and historical ties between the two nations and the importance of protecting minority communities. The international pressure underscores the gravity of the situation and the need for Bangladesh to uphold its commitment to human rights and protect all its citizens, regardless of their religion. Human rights organizations have been actively involved in raising awareness about the attacks and advocating for the rights of the victims. The global outcry serves as a reminder of the importance of unity and solidarity in the face of injustice. It is crucial for the Bangladeshi government to take decisive action to ensure the safety and well-being of all its citizens and to foster a society where diversity is celebrated and protected. Section 6. Underlying causes of the violence. The root causes of the violence against Hindus in Bangladesh are complex and multifaceted. Political instability, religious extremism, and socio-economic disparities all play a role in creating an environment where such attacks can occur. The current political vacuum has created a sense of lawlessness, emboldening extremist groups to act with impunity. These groups often exploit religious sentiments to incite hatred and violence against minorities, further dividing an already polarized society. Addressing the underlying causes of the violence requires a multi-pronged approach. This includes strengthening law enforcement, promoting interfaith dialogue, and addressing socioeconomic inequalities that often fuel tensions. Section 7. The role of religious extremism. While the causes of the violence are complex, the role of religious extremism cannot be ignored. Extremist groups, often with a history of intolerance, have exploited the current political climate to incite violence against Hindus. They spread hateful propaganda, demonize minorities, and justify attacks in the name of religion. These groups operate both openly and clandestinely, taking advantage of weak law enforcement and a climate of impunity. Their actions not only terrorize minority communities, but also threaten the very fabric of Bangladeshi society. Combating religious extremism requires a multifaceted approach, including legal action against hate speech, promoting interfaith dialogue, and empowering moderate voices within all communities. Section 8. The need for peace and security. The violence in Bangladesh is a tragedy for all involved. It has claimed innocent lives, shattered communities, and tarnished the country's reputation. It is crucial for peace and stability to be restored, ensuring the safety and security of all citizens, regardless of their religion or ethnicity. The Bangladeshi government has a fundamental duty to protect its citizens and uphold the rule of law. This includes taking decisive action against perpetrators of violence, regardless of their religious or political affiliations. Creating a peaceful and inclusive society requires a collective effort. It involves promoting tolerance, understanding, and respect for diversity at all levels of society. Section 9. Conclusion. Protecting minority rights. The attacks on Hindus in Bangladesh are a stark reminder of the importance of protecting minority rights. Every citizen has the right to live in safety and security, free from fear and discrimination. The international community must continue to pressure the Bangladeshi government to fulfill its obligations and ensure the well-being of all its citizens. Failure to address the root causes of the violence and protect minority rights will have dire consequences for Bangladesh. It will further deepen divisions, fuel extremism, and undermine the country's social fabric. The future of Bangladesh depends on its ability to embrace its diversity and create a society where all citizens can live together in peace and harmony.